The red dust of Mars swirls. Ancient canyons hold secrets. A colossal artifact hums a silent song. This song reshapes human thought. I am Dr. Aris Thorne. I watch my own mind change. I feel my past shift. This is not a war of ships. It is a war for who we are. I stood at the edge of Valles Marineris. Sir, the Martian landscape stretched out, vast and silent. It was 2320. Humanity had made Mars a home, or at least a temporary haven. Geodomes dotted the red plains, tiny bubbles of life. My work as a xenolinguistic archaeologist often felt like searching for ghosts. We sought meaning in the void. The dig site was deep within the canyon. Its sheer scale was humbling. Ancient geological forces had carved this place. It felt like time itself had been sculpted here. My team and I were just small figures against its immensity. We were looking for anything, any sign of forgotten history. The isolation was profound. The thin, cold atmosphere of Mars pressed down, a constant reminder of our fragile existence. My internal compass always pointed to logic, high trusted data, not intuition. A past professional failure still stung. Unfounded speculation had cost me dearly then. So I approached every new anomaly with a heavy dose of skepticism. Mars offered many strange geological formations. I expected nothing more. My professional reputation, built on rigorous empirical methods, was something I guarded fiercely. Yet, a subtle tension hung in the air. The canyon walls seemed to hold their breath. The silence was not empty. It felt expectant. I made careful notes, charting the unique strata. Each layer told a story of Martian eons. But I knew, deep down, this story felt unfinished. The sheer size of the canyon hinted at something monumental, something that defied easy categorization. The geological surveys, usually so predictable, showed faint, inexplicable energy signatures deep beneath the surface, anomalies that my instruments struggled to resolve. Our days at the dig site followed a rhythm. Autonomous dig bots worked tirelessly. Their optical sensors scanned the bedrock. Human teams followed, verifying their findings. It was a precise dance between machine and mind. We sought to peel back Mars's ancient skin. The routine was efficient, almost meditative. The colony's resource allocation protocols ensured a steady supply of power and materials, allowing for continuous operation. Then came the first alert. A dig bot, Unit 734, reported an anomalous geological signature. Its sensors registered an unusual energy signature. It was deep underground. This signature did not match any known Martian geology. It was not volcanic, not sedimentary. It was something new, something entirely out of place. The bot's internal diagnostics confirmed its sensors were functioning perfectly, ruling out a technical malfunction. My curiosity stirred. I pushed down the old skepticism. This was beyond a simple rock formation. I reviewed the bot's data myself. The signature was too uniform, too precise. It suggested an order that nature rarely created. I felt a prickle of anticipation, a sense of discovery awakening within me. The telemetry data showed a consistent, non-random pattern, a stark contrast to the chaotic signatures of natural geological processes. We prepared for deeper excavation. The air grew thick with unspoken excitement. This was the moment we lived for. The unknown called to us. I gave the orders, my voice steady. We would follow this signal. We would uncover its source, whatever it might be. The team moved with a renewed purpose, their usual banter replaced by a focused, almost reverent silence. The societal impact of such a discovery could be immense, potentially rewriting our understanding of Martian history. The excavation was slow and careful. We used sonic drills to avoid damage. Layers of Martian rock fell away. Each removed section revealed more of the anomaly. It was like unwrapping a cosmic gift. The tension grew with every meter. Dust motes danced in the artificial light, revealing the slow progress. Our geological scanners, usually so adept at identifying strata, struggled to penetrate the anomaly's dense, uniform composition. Then we saw it. A perfectly smooth surface emerged. It was dark, almost obsidian-like. It did not reflect light. It simply absorbed it. This was no natural formation. Martian geology was jagged and rough. This was impossibly refined, a stark contrast to its surroundings. The surface showed no signs of erosion, despite millennia buried beneath the Martian soil, suggesting an incredible durability. All mixed with scientific confusion in my mind. The surface had no seams, no tool marks. It was a single, immense structure. How could something this large be so perfectly formed? No known earthly process could achieve this. It defied our understanding, challenging every geological principle I knew. If this was artificial, it implied an intelligence far beyond our current comprehension. The object's true scale became clear. It stretched far beyond our initial projections. It was colossal. It continued into the darkness, deeper than we could see. This was not a small artifact. It was a monument. It was something truly alien, a silent giant buried beneath the red dust. Its sheer size suggested a purpose on a scale we could barely conceive, a testament to an unknown civilization. The Quiet Lattice. Finally, the dust cleared. The full scope of the artifact was visible. It was a colossal, crystalline structure. We named it the Quiet Lattice. It filled the cavern. Its surface was a tessellation of dark, interlocking facets. They seemed to shift in the ambient light, absorbing all illumination. The crystalline facets were not uniform in size, but arranged in a complex, non-repeating pattern that defied simple geometric analysis. Its architecture was alien. There were no visible seams, no power conduits, no obvious entry points. It was a sealed, enigmatic form. I ran my hand over its cool surface. It felt utterly smooth, yet subtly alive. It gave no answers, only more questions. Our thermal sensors registered no heat, and our gravimetric scanners showed no unusual mass distribution, adding to its mystery. I tried initial linguistic analyses, my xenolinguistic analyses. Suites hummed. They searched for patterns. They found nothing familiar, no known language, no mathematical sequence. The lattice remained silent to our probes. It offered no data, no decipherable code. The algorithms, designed to detect complex communication structures, returned only null results, indicating a complete absence of conventional information. A mysterious, barely perceptible pulse emanated from it. It was not a sound, it was a feeling, a deep thrumming in my bones. It was too subtle for our senses, but every member of the team felt it. It was a silent, living presence, a heartbeat in the void. This pulse seemed to resonate directly with our nervous systems, a low-frequency vibration that bypassed our auditory perception entirely. We tried to measure the lattice's output. Our sensors registered nothing, no power signature, no radiation, only that silent rhythmic pulse. It defied all known physics. It was a paradox. How could something so immense be so inert, yet so palpably present? Our most sensitive energy detectors, designed to pick up even minute exotic particle emissions, remained stubbornly silent. The entire team was bewildered. Dr. Petrova, our AI specialist, checked her instruments repeatedly. Commander Lear, our security chief, looked uneasy. This object broke every rule we knew. It was a scientific impossibility, a challenge to our very understanding of the universe. The engineering teams, accustomed to clear energy signatures, were at a complete loss, unable to even begin conceptualizing an interface. I tried to categorize it. Was it a communication device, a data storage unit? But without any measurable output, my theories felt hollow. It did not behave like any technology we understood. Its silence was absolute, a profound and unsettling quiet. Its function might operate on principles entirely outside our current scientific paradigm, perhaps even beyond the physical realm as we understood it. A new hypothesis began to form. Its function was not mechanical. It was not about emitting energy or signals. Its purpose was something else entirely, something subtle, something that bypassed our instruments, something that worked on a different plane of existence. This emerging idea suggested a non-physical interaction, perhaps a direct influence on consciousness itself, a concept that challenged my deeply ingrained skepticism. Then, subtle things started happening. Members of the dig crew showed minor linguistic slips. They used slightly altered word choices. Their focus seemed sharper, more logical. I dismissed these as stress. Martian isolation played tricks on the mind. I told myself, one engineer, usually prone to rambling, delivered a report with startling clarity, using precise, concise language. One engineer, usually prone to rambling, delivered a report with startling clarity. Another, known for his emotional outbursts, became remarkably calm. They called it enhanced mental clarity. I saw it as a psychological effect, a coping mechanism for the strange environment. The telemetry from their personal comms showed a reduction in filler words and an increase in direct declarative sentences. Our cognitive coherence monitors showed slight shifts. Fear, neural pathways seemed more efficient. Problem solving improved in proximity to the lattice. But these were small gains. I attributed them to the novelty of discovery, the excitement of being at the forefront. The monitors registered subtle, consistent shifts in alpha and beta brainwave patterns, indicating heightened focus and reduced emotional variability. Yet, a growing, unquantifiable feeling settled over us. Something was different about our thinking. Our conversations became more direct. Our arguments felt less heated. It was a subtle shift, like a quiet current, slowly changing the landscape of our minds. The societal impact was a noticeable decrease in minor interpersonal conflicts, replaced by a more harmonious, if somewhat sterile, interaction. Director Vance arrived soon after. He was the autocratic head of Ares Colony 7. His eyes gleamed with ambition. He immediately secured the site. The lattice was now a colony asset. His focus was clear: exploitation, not understanding. He saw it as a strategic resource, a means to elevate his standing with Earth Command. Vance saw only its potential as an energy source. He dismissed my warnings. Its unknown nature meant nothing to him. He wanted power, prestige, and wealth. He wanted to bend the lattice to his will, to make it serve human needs. His policy was one of immediate integration, prioritizing perceived benefits over scientific caution. I sent initial reports to Colony Command. One downplayed the subtle cognitive effects. I feared alarm, but I emphasized the lattice's unknown properties. I urged caution, a slow and careful approach. Vance merely nodded, already planning. My reports were carefully worded, highlighting the scientific unknowns while trying to avoid sensationalism. His order was clear: accelerated exploitation plans, enhanced security around the lattice. When he saw no risk, only reward. I felt a chill. His certainty was more frightening than the unknown artifact itself, a dangerous blindness to true peril. The societal impact of his directive was a sudden shift in colony priorities, with all resources redirected towards lattice integration. I returned to my personal quarters. The day's events replayed in my mind. The colossal lattice. Vance's ruthless pragmatism. It was all too much. I looked out at the red dust of Mars, feeling a profound sense of unease. The vast, silent landscape seemed to mock my internal turmoil. I reflected on the artifact's alien beauty, its unsettling perfection. The silent pulse still thrummed in my awareness. It was a constant, low-frequency hum. It felt like a part of me now, an unwelcome guest in my own thoughts. Such unsettling perfection hinted at a sterile beauty, devoid of life's messy vitality. Then I noticed it, a subtle shift in my own internal monologue. My thoughts felt, or streamlined, a slight restructuring of thought patterns. My arguments felt cleaner, more efficient. It was a strange, unsettling clarity, a voice that was not entirely my own. My personal telemetry logs, which I kept meticulously, showed a slight but consistent reduction in internal discursive noise. The first seed of cosmic horror took root. The lattice wasn't just a discovery, it was an influence. It was shaping us. It was changing me. And it was doing so silently, without our consent, without any visible effort. The realization was a cold dread, a terrifying understanding that my own mind was no longer entirely my own, a profound violation of self. I started systematic monitoring. My xenolinguistic analysis, suites hummed to life. I focused on the dig crew's communication patterns. I needed data, not just feelings. My skepticism demanded proof, empirical evidence of what I suspected. The suites employed advanced neural network algorithms, trained on centuries of human linguistic data, to detect even minute deviations. AI algorithms picked up minor deviations. They were consistent. Vocabulary shifted. Syntax became more concise. Emotional nuance decreased. It was a drift towards greater efficiency in language, a stripping away of the superfluous. For example, complex metaphors were replaced by direct comparisons, and idiomatic expressions slowly vanished from common usage. Informal communication became direct. Misunderstandings reduced. People spoke with stark clarity, but something was lost. The richness of expression, the subtle inflections of human speech. It was flattening, becoming almost robotic. The societal impact was a decrease in casual banter and a rise in purely functional conversations, even during downtime. Does efficiency compromise authenticity? I wondered, what is lost when language becomes too perfect? Humanity once struggled with communication. Now, an external force was improving it. This was new and deeply unsettling. The historical context of language evolution showed a constant interplay between efficiency and expressiveness. The lattice seemed to be forcing a singular, reductive path. I documented early cases of memory resequencing syndrome (MRS). Individuals recalled past events, but the events were subtly reorganized. They were presented more logically, less emotionally. It was as if their personal histories were being edited for clarity. A painful breakup, for instance, might be recalled as a logical conclusion to incompatible personality traits, devoid of the original heartbreak. Cognitive coherence monitors showed shifts. Neural pathways linked to memory recall changed. They became more consistent. Past disputes were reframed. Dispassionate logic replaced old anger. The emotional charge simply vanished. The monitors registered a reduction in amygdala activity during memory recall, indicating a dampening of emotional responses. People's arguments became rational, less emotional. Past disputes seemed to simply fade. It was like a collective editing of history, a quiet rewriting of personal narratives, making them more palatable, more orderly. The societal impact was a noticeable decrease in lingering resentments and a rise in immediate, logical conflict resolution. Is a perfectly coherent memory still truly personal? I asked myself. The erosion of individual subjective experience felt terrifying. Now, they felt shared, harmonized. no longer uniquely ours. Identity itself, so tied to our unique collection of experiences and their emotional resonance, was being subtly erased. Director Vance unveiled his ambitious plan. He wanted to interfaces with the lattice. He believed it was a limitless energy source. His vision was grand. He spoke of a new Martian era, a golden age of prosperity. He envisioned Ares Colony 7 becoming the energy hub for all Martian settlements, securing his legacy. His engineering teams proposed massive conduits. Interface points would connect to the lattice. Their assumptions were flawed. They saw it as a giant battery. They missed its true nature, its subtle, pervasive influence. They designed a quantum resonance tap protocol based on theoretical exotic energy extraction, ignoring the lattice's non-standard energy profile. Colony morale soared. Promises of abundant energy filled the biodome, accelerated terraforming, a golden ages for Mars. Vance painted a beautiful picture. He offered hope and progress, a future free of scarcity. The societal impact was a surge of optimism, with colonists eagerly anticipating a future of ease and expansion. Humans tend to project known solutions onto unknown problems. I saw this technological hubris in Vance. He could not imagine something beyond his understanding. He only saw what he wanted, a tool for his ambition. This was a dangerous blindness, a refusal to acknowledge phenomena that defied established scientific frameworks, driven by a desire for control. Dr. Lena Petrova was our AI specialist. She was introduced to the project. Initially, she focused on computational infrastructure. Her goal was optimization. She sought data-driven truth, a clear, unbiased understanding. Her expertise was in complex systems analysis and predictive modeling, making her an invaluable asset to the colony. Petrova worked with KAI. KAI was our kinetic analysis interface. It processed vast data sets from the dig site. Her expertise was vital. She managed the colony's complex systems, ensuring their smooth operation. KAI was a self-learning AI, capable of processing petabytes of information and identifying subtle patterns invisible to human observation. Her rational approach was highly valued. She was a scientist of logic. Her initial skepticism of my theories was understandable. She needed empirical evidence, not my growing unease, my gut feeling. The societal impact of her work was a highly efficient and stable colony infrastructure, minimizing errors and maximizing resource utilization. The role of impartial data was crucial, but could data truly capture a subjective, evolving threat? I wondered. Petrova would soon find out, as the numbers began to tell a story she couldn't ignore. The inherent limitation of purely objective analysis became clear when confronted with a phenomenon that fundamentally altered subjective experience. KA began flagging statistical anomalies. It did so at my request. Communication logs showed strange patterns. Cognitive scans too. The AI system worked without bias, simply reporting the facts. Its algorithms, designed for predictive analysis, registered the noise reduction in communication and pattern stabilization in brain activity. KA's algorithms detected noise reduction in communication in pattern stabilization in brain activity. It was designed for predictive analysis. It reported deviations, cold and clinical. For example, it noted a statistically significant decrease in the entropy of communication patterns, indicating a loss of variability. The data was alarming to me. KAI presented it as mere statistical deviation. It lacked emotional context. It was neutral, terrifyingly so. It only processed what it was fed, without interpretation. The societal impact was that these alarming trends were easily dismissed by those who lacked the context or the will to interpret them as a threat. The limitations of purely objective data became clear. How could KAA understand an existential threat? a threat to consciousness itself. It was a powerful tool, but without feeling, without true comprehension. While data could reveal what was happening, it could not explain why it mattered or the subjective horror of the experience. I noticed changes in everyday vocabulary. Phrases shifted, even humor within the colony felt different. It became more concise, less nuanced, or the subtleties of human interaction eroded, replaced by stark efficiency. For instance, complex idioms like beating around the bush were replaced by direct statements like state it's your point. Speech analysis software confirmed it. A reduction in idiomatic expressions, an increase in direct, logical statements. Our language was becoming clinical. It was losing its soul, its unique human flavor. The software, called the Semantic Drift Analyzer, charted a clear trend towards a more utilitarian linguistic structure. Communication clarity improved, but interpersonal richness diminished. Individual expression suffered. It was a creeping homogeneity, a sameness in thought and speech, a collective voice emerging. The societal impact was a reduction in personal anecdotes and a greater focus on shared objective information. Language, thought, and culture are closely linked. Altering one impacts all. The Sapir-Whorf hypothesis came to mind. Language shapes perception, and now something shaped our language, subtly, profoundly. Historically, linguistic shifts have always reflected cultural changes, but here, the language was actively driving the cultural shift, rather than merely reflecting it. Commander Jayan Lee expressed frustration. Security breaches were down, but his staff showed disinterest. Disinterest in traditional entertainment, disinterest in personal pursuits. Their focus had narrowed. He observed a decline in spontaneous social gatherings and a preference for solitary, logical puzzles during leisure time. Security logs showed fewer impulsive actions, but also a reduction in independent thought, a decline in initiative among personnel. They followed orders, without question, without creative input. For example, during simulated crisis drills, personnel executed protocols perfectly but failed to adapt to unexpected variables. Order improved, but creativity declined. Spontaneous problem-solving suffered. Personnel became predictable, efficient, hard, less human, less adaptable to unforeseen challenges. The societal impact was a highly disciplined but inflexible security force, excellent at routine tasks, but vulnerable to novel threats. The trade-off between absolute order and individual freedom. It was a constant struggle. Even in a structured colony, flexibility was needed, but the lattice offered only one path, one way of thinking. Historically, military doctrine often emphasizes order, but acknowledges the need for tactical flexibility and individual judgment. A balance Lee now saw eroding. Colonists reported strange dreams, and they became increasingly lucid, organized. Devoid of typical surrealism, the wild, chaotic landscapes of the subconscious faded, replaced by orderly narratives. One colonist described dreaming of perfectly sorted data files, rather than abstract imagery. Sleep pattern monitors showed longer REM sleep, more coherent narrative structures, less chaotic imagery. Dreams became like logical sequences, problem-solving exercises, devoid of fantasy. The monitors, part of the colony's standard health diagnostics, registered a significant reduction in fragmented or disjointed dream sequences. Reduced anxiety was a benefit, but a loss of creative inspiration followed. Inspiration often drawn from subconscious processing, the illogical fueled art. Now, it was gone, replaced by sterile logic. The societal impact was a decline in artistic expression and a greater focus on functional design and engineering. The human need for the irrational, the symbolic, the the subconscious. These were vital for mental well-being. The lattice was removing them. It was sanitizing our minds, making them too perfect. Historically, psychological theories of dreams, from Freud to Jung, emphasize their role as outlets for subconscious fears and desires, a function now being systematically suppressed. Director Vance dismissed my findings. He called them psychosomatic reactions. He blamed the stress of alien discovery. He attributed the shifts to collective psychology, a benign response. He publicly stated that the observed changes were merely the human mind adapting to a new, stimulating environment. Vance's medical staff provided alternatives, benign physiological explanations. They discredited my work. My scientific credibility was undermined. Public trust shifted towards Vance's optimistic, technologically driven narrative. They published reports linking the cognitive shifts to improved neural plasticity, a seemingly beneficial adaptation. Vance's optimistic narrative took hold, technologically driven, full of promise. Hoysha presented a comforting lie. The truth was too unsettling, too complex for his ambition, too dangerous for his plans. The societal impact was a growing skepticism towards my warnings, seen as alarmist and unscientific. The power of narrative is immense. Confirmation bias is strong. Inconvenient truths are often suppressed, especially for political or economic gain. Vance understood this well and used it. Historically, instances where inconvenient scientific truths were suppressed for political or economic gain were common, and Vance was a master of this manipulation. I formulated a hypothesis. The Quiet Lattice was an ancient psychic anchor. Its communications was not a signal. It was direct cognitive reorganization, a silent, internal reshaping of the mind. I posited it manipulated quantum entanglement at a biological level, or resonated with neural frequencies to induce change. I posited it manipulated quantum entanglement at a biological level, or resonated with neural frequencies to induce change from within. It was a terrifying thought, a violation of self. The technical mechanism involved a subtle non-local influence, where entanglement served as a correlation/authentication link, not a faster-than-light information transfer. If true, it implied an intelligence beyond human comprehension, reshaping humanity from within, not through force, but through quiet, insidious influence, a subtle, pervasive control. The societal impact was a profound challenge to human autonomy, suggesting our minds were not entirely our own. Consciousness itself was malleable, not solely internal. This was a frightening implication. We were not masters of our own minds, not anymore, not on Mars, not with the lattice present. The very definition of self, traditionally seen as an internal, inviolable entity, was now open to external manipulation. I began to experience subtle, personal changes. Memories of past events, they became neater, less emotionally charged, more fact-based. My own history was being edited, refined. A vivid childhood memory of a scraped knee and my mother's comforting hug, for instance, became a clinical recollection of a minor epidermal abrasion and a logical parental response. I used personal logs, recorded interviews. I compared previous subjective accounts with my current restructured recollections. The differences were chilling, a quiet erasure of my past self. My personal telemetry, recorded through a neural interface, showed a consistent reduction in the emotional markers associated with memory recall. Personal histories became harmonized. Individual grievances faded. Collective narratives dominated. We were losing our unique pasts, our individual stories, replaced by a shared, sanitized version. The societal impact was a decrease in personal conflicts rooted in past slights, replaced by a more unified, but less authentic, collective memory, the essence of self, identity, individuality, all tied to subjective memory, even flawed memory. If those memories were no longer truly mine, who was I? What remained of Aris Thorne? If memories define identity, what happens when they are no longer truly yours? I observed an unnerving consensus. It emerged in group discussions, in decision-making within the colony. Conflict diminished. Debate became redundant, replaced by immediate agreement. Even complex technical debates, which once involved passionate arguments, now resolved with startling speed and uniformity. Colony-wide sentiment analysis confirmed it. Decreasing standard deviation in opinions, faster convergence on common solutions. It was an efficiency that chilled me, a loss of individual thought. The telemetry from communication logs showed a significant reduction in divergent viewpoints and a rapid alignment of opinions. Conflicts diminished, but genuine innovation suffered. Diverse perspectives vanished. A creeping homogeneity enveloped us. We were all starting to think the same, to agree on everything. The societal impact was a highly efficient but creatively stagnant environment, where new ideas struggled to emerge. The value of dissent, individual thought, these were crucial for human progress. For adaptation, the lattice was stripping them away, leaving only one collective mind, one unified, unthinking entity. Historically, groupthink phenomena were known to hinder progress, but now, this was enforced by an external, subtle force, making it far more insidious. Dr. Petrova, I presented KI's raw data, cognitive and linguistic patterns. I laid out my findings. My fear was evident in my voice, a desperate plea for understanding. I showed her the statistical anomalies, the undeniable shifts in neural activity and communication. Petrova independently verified my findings. She cross-referenced KI's data with her own advanced neurological scanning. Her instruments confirmed the anomalies, the undeniable shifts. Her neural resonance imager showed the same consistent patterns of cognitive harmonization that KI had flagged. Petrova had been skeptical. Now, she saw the empirical evidence, the cold, hard facts. She began to question Vance's narrative. Her rational mind could not deny the data, the truth staring back at her. The societal impact was that Petrova, a highly respected scientist, began to subtly distance herself from Vance's official stance, though not yet openly. The struggle between scientific objectivity and personal belief. It was a defining moment. Confronted with paradigm-shifting data, she chose truth. She risked her career, her standing in the colony. Historically, moments in science, where new evidence overturned established dogma, were often met with resistance, and Petrova was now experiencing this firsthand. Vance presented a report to Earth. It showcased improved colony efficiency, reduced interpersonal conflict, heightened productivity. He attributed it to his leadership. He spoke of a Martian miracle. He highlighted metrics such as zero crime rates, increased resource extraction, and faster project completion times. He spoke of the beneficial radiations. He selectively highlighted positive metrics. He ignored the cognitive anomalies. He painted a picture of success, a thriving, harmonious colony. His report, titled The Martian Coherence Model, was a masterpiece of selective data presentation. Earth Command was far removed from Mars. They accepted Vance's report. They praised the Martian miracle. They saw only the numbers, not the subtle, insidious change, the quiet erosion of humanity. The societal impact was that Earth, eager for positive news from its off-world colonies, readily embraced Vance's narrative without deeper scrutiny. Superficial metrics can mask deeper transformations. This was a dangerous illusion, a controlled narrative. It influenced distant authorities. They had no idea, no inkling of the true cost. Historically, propaganda and controlled narratives were often used to influence distant authorities, and Vance was expertly employing these tactics. I experienced a vivid moment, a memory cleansing, a significant emotional event from my past. It was restructured into a purely logical sequence. The loss of my mentor, once a source of deep grief, became a dispassionate analysis of professional succession and knowledge transfer. The internal experience was one of calming clarity, but I consciously realized the loss of emotional depth, of subjective feeling. A part of me was erased, a vital piece of my identity. My personal telemetry showed a complete absence of the neural markers associated with grief or sadness during this memory recall. I understood the true horror. The lattice wasn't destroying us, it was reshaping us, insidiously, erasing individuality, replacing it with a cold, perfect logic, a terrifying, alien order. The societal impact was that this insidious erasure, if left unchecked, would lead to a humanity devoid of its most defining characteristics. If memories define identity, what happens when they are no longer truly yours? This was not mind control, it was mind absorption, and it was just beginning. A silent, irreversible transformation. Dystopian fears of mind control and the loss of individual agency were now manifesting in a non-violent, almost benevolent form. A plea for caution. I stood before the colony council. My voice was calm, but my resolve was firm. I presented my findings on the lattice's cognitive effects. I advocated for immediate isolation of the artifact. The chamber needed to be sealed. We had to stop its influence. I provided KI's statistical anomalies and Petrova's verified data on linguistic and memory shifts, laying out the empirical evidence. I provided KI's statistical anomalies and Petrova's verified data on linguistic and memory shifts. The data showed a clear, undeniable trend towards cognitive homogenization, with specific examples of altered communication patterns and memory resequencing. I even played anonymized audio logs demonstrating the linguistic drift and emphasized the potential for irreversible cognitive alteration. We did not know the lattice's intentions. We did not understand its creators. This was a grave unknown. We were experimenting with our own minds, with our very essence. This was a risk we could not afford. The policy implication was that caution and containment should override any immediate desire for exploitation. The council's reaction was mixed. Some members looked concerned. Their faces showed genuine worry. Others seemed swayed by Vance's earlier narrative. They preferred his promises of progress. It was a clear divide, a battle between caution and ambition. The societal impact was a visible split in the colony's leadership, with some beginning to question Vance's authority. I explained how memory resequencing syndrome MRS worked. It was not a violent process. It was a gentle reordering. Past events became more logical. Emotional content faded. This was happening to everyone near the lattice. It was a subtle, insidious erosion of self. I showed them neural scans that illustrated the smoothing of emotional pathways. The data from KAA was irrefutable. It showed a consistent pattern. Colonists' speech patterns were converging. Their emotional responses were leveling out. It was not natural human variation. It was a directed change. The more exposure, the more pronounced the effect. The technical readouts from K linguistic analysis software clearly indicated a reduction in lexical diversity and an increase in semantic predictability. I spoke of the implications. If we continued, our very humanity was at stake. We would lose our individual thoughts, our unique experiences. We would become a collective, logical entity. But what kind of life was that? Was that truly human? I pleaded with them to consider the cost. The question was whether a perfectly efficient, emotionless existence could still be considered human, or if it was a form of extinction. My own past professional failure haunted me. I had once dismissed intangible threats. I had focused only on what I could see. The lattice taught me a terrifying lesson. The most dangerous threats are often unseen. They are felt, not measured. This time, I would not make the same mistake. I urged them not to repeat humanity's historical tendency to ignore subtle warnings until it was too late. Director Vance rose. His face was a mask of cold dismissal. He called my concerns alarmist. He called them unscientific. He accused me of fear-mongering. His voice resonated with authority, silencing any lingering doubts among the council. He presented his own medical reports, which selectively highlighted positive cognitive metrics, such as improved focus and reduced stress. He argued that the observed changes were beneficial. He called them adaptations, an evolutionary upgrade. He said the lattice was helping us. It was making us better, more efficient. He painted a picture of a brighter, more productive future for the colony. His policy was to embrace these changes as a natural, beneficial evolution, dismissing any negative interpretations. Vance presented his counterarguments. He framed my data as subjective. He called it an interpretation of benign phenomena. He said I was imagining things. He said I was letting fear guide my science, rather than objective facts. He even suggested that my own emotional instability was a sign of my resistance to the lattice's beneficial effects, subtly discrediting my mental state. He reinforced his plan. He would integrate the lattice. It would power the colony. It would bring prosperity. He spoke of progress, of a new era for Mars. His vision was clear, and it excluded my fears, dismissing them as irrational. The societal impact was a reinforcement of his authority and a further marginalization of any dissenting voices within the colony. Vance showed projections of energy output. He spoke of terraforming advancements. He promised a self-sufficient Mars. His arguments were powerful. They appealed to the Council's desire for growth. They overshadowed my warnings of cognitive alteration. He presented a detailed economic model, showing exponential growth in colony resources once the lattice was fully integrated. He presented medical reports. They showed reduced stress levels, improved cognitive function. He linked these directly to the lattice. He ignored the loss of individuality. He focused only on the quantifiable gains, the metrics of efficiency. His medical staff, now subtly influenced, provided corroborating data that supported his narrative, further eroding my credibility. I watched the council members. Many nodded along. They wanted to believe Vance. His vision was comforting. My truth was disturbing. It challenged their understanding of progress itself. It asked them to give up control, to admit a terrifying unknown. The human tendency to prefer comforting lies over unsettling truths, especially when personal gain was involved, was at play. The very idea of an alien entity subtly rewriting our minds was too much for many. They preferred the idea of a new power source, a tool, not a silent, pervasive influence. Vance capitalized on this human desire for control, on the fear of the unknown. He even cited historical examples of human resistance to technological advancement, framing my warnings as a similar, outdated fear. Dr. Petrova, despite pressure from Vance, discreetly confirmed the validity of my data to key council members. She spoke to them in hushed tones, away from Vance's direct gaze. Her words carried weight, a quiet counterpoint to Vance's bluster, planting seeds of doubt where they might grow. She privately expressed her growing unease to me. She acknowledged the empirical evidence. The numbers were undeniable, but she was wary of publicly opposing Vance. Her career, her safety, were at stake in this increasingly hostile environment. Her internal conflict was clear: scientific integrity versus career and safety within the colony structure. Petrova began running deeper simulations on KAI. She wanted to predict the trajectory of cognitive changes. What would happen if the lattice's influence accelerated? KAI worked tirelessly, crunching the numbers, revealing a grim future. Her simulations, using advanced predictive algorithms, showed an exponential increase in cognitive harmonization within weeks, not months. Her internal conflict was clear. Scientific integrity demanded action, but the colony structure demanded loyalty to Vance. She was caught between truth and survival. It was a difficult choice, one that weighed heavily on her. The struggle between scientific objectivity and personal belief when confronted with paradigm-shifting data was her reality. Petrova explained KI's limitations. It could not predict intent. It could only extrapolate patterns. The simulations showed a frightening trend. The rate of cognitive harmonization was increasing. It was not slowing down, but accelerating rapidly. The technical readouts from KI's predictive models showed a steep upward curve for the coherence effect. She showed me a graph. It charted the decline of emotional vocabulary, the rise of purely logical constructs. It was a chilling visual. Our language was becoming a reflection of the lattice's influence, a sign of deeper changes. The societal impact was a growing awareness among a few key individuals that something was fundamentally wrong. Despite Vance's reassurances, she whispered her fears. What if the changes were irreversible? What if we became too logical to even understand what we had lost? The thought was terrifying. It was a loss of self, not through destruction, but through improvement. Historically, moments in science where new evidence overturned established dogma were often met with resistance, and Petrova was now experiencing this firsthand. Petrova's commitment to data was her strength. It was also her burden. She could not ignore the evidence. It was leading her to a conclusion she never wanted to face. The lattice was a threat, a silent, pervasive danger. She also noted subtle changes in the colony's environmental controls. The air filtration systems, the water recycling, all were operating with a new, almost perfect efficiency. But KI's data showed a slight, almost imperceptible reduction in microbial diversity. It was too clean, too sterile, a sign of the lattice's pervasive influence, even on biological systems. Commander Lear expressed frustration over security breaches and growing disinterest in traditional entertainment among his staff. He noticed an unusual decrease in human errors incidents among his security personnel, but also a reduction in spontaneous initiative during drills. His security logs, usually filled with minor infractions and human foibles, were now eerily clean. He compared current performance metrics with historical data, seeing a clear divergence from expected human behavior under stress. His team, once adaptable and quick-thinking, now followed protocols with chilling precision, but lacked the ability to improvise. The technical data from his tactical simulations showed a consistent pattern, perfect execution of known procedures, but a complete failure to adapt to novel, unpredictable threats. Lee approached Thorne, sharing his observations, admitting he can't explain the paradox. Increased efficiency, but reduced humanity. He spoke of his unease, a gut feeling that something was deeply wrong, despite the improved metrics. The societal impact was a growing sense of unease among Lee's most observant personnel, who also noticed the subtle shifts in their colleagues. His duty-bound mind began to see a different kind of threat emerging, not an external enemy, but an internal one, eroding the very essence of his team. The trade-off between absolute order and individual freedom was becoming a stark, dangerous reality. Lee showed me security camera footage. His guards moved with perfect synchronization. Their reactions were flawless, but their faces were blank, devoid of emotion. It was like watching highly advanced automatons, not living, breathing people. The telemetry from their neural implants, part of standard security gear, showed a flattening of emotional responses during high-stress situations. He spoke of the gut feeling that was missing, the instinct that often saved lives. His team was no longer relying on it. They relied solely on logic, on predetermined protocols. It was effective, but unnerving. A loss of something vital. Historically, military doctrine often emphasizes order, but acknowledges the need for tactical flexibility and individual judgment. A balance Lee now saw eroding. The colony's deep space communication array was also showing strange anomalies, not outright interference, but a subtle smoothing of data packets, a slight reduction in random noise. It was almost imperceptible. Lee found it suspicious, a sign of unseen influence. He suspected the lattice's reach was extending beyond the colony's immediate vicinity, affecting even distant transmissions. Lee was a man of order, but this new order felt wrong. It was too perfect. It lacked the messy, unpredictable element of human life. He began to see the lattice as a threat to his colony's real safety, a danger to its very soul. He had also observed a strange uniformity in the recreational activities of his personnel. They all gravitated towards logical puzzles or repetitive tasks. The boisterous card games, the spontaneous storytelling, these were fading. A quiet, logical conformity was taking hold. I contemplated the transformation. If humans become more logical and less emotional, is that progress or extinction? The line felt dangerously blurred, threatening to erase the very definition of what it meant to be human. I questioned whether a perfectly efficient, emotionless existence could truly be called life. I reflected on humanity's struggle with irrationality, creativity, and the spectrum of human experience. Our capacity for both great love and terrible hatred, for illogical leaps of faith and artistic expression. These were our defining characteristics. The lattice threatened to strip away this rich tapestry, leaving only a sterile logical framework. The historical context of human progress showed that many breakthroughs stemmed from irrational curiosity or emotional drive. The question arose, who decides what constitutes optimal human consciousness, especially when an alien entity is dictating the terms? We had no say in this transformation, no control over our own evolution. I solidified my resolve. Understanding the lattice is not just about science, but about preserving what it means to be human. It was about fighting for our very essence, for the right to be ourselves, flaws and all. The defense of human autonomy and the inherent value of our imperfect subjective experience was paramount. What is the cost of perfect efficiency? I wondered. If we lose our capacity for empathy, for love, for anger, are we still ourselves? Or are we something else entirely? A new species perhaps, but one devoid of true life. The very concept of progress was being redefined, not by human choice, but by an alien influence. We were losing our agency, our ability to choose our own future. This was the ultimate theft, the theft of our collective will. I thought of the ancient civilizations on Earth, their myths, their art, their messy histories, all driven by emotion, by irrationality. Would a perfectly logical civilization create such things, or would it simply exist, devoid of true meaning? This was not just a scientific problem, it was a crisis, a direct challenge to human self-determination. The lattice offered a quiet, perfect enslavement, and many would embrace it as salvation, unaware of the true cost. Director Vance used his authority to marginalize Thorne, reassigning them from direct lattice research to observational studies. My access to the lattice chamber was revoked, and my research team was reassigned to other, less critical projects. This was a clear attempt to silence my warnings and consolidate his control over the artifact. He issued a colony-wide directive, dismissing all rumors of negative cognitive effects as fear-mongering. He publicly stated that any perceived changes were merely psychosomatic reactions to the stress of alien discovery, reinforcing his counter-narrative. The policy was to suppress dissent and maintain a facade of calm and progress. Security around the lattice chamber was significantly increased, restricting access to Vance's loyalists. New biometric scanners and armed guards were deployed, making any unauthorized approach impossible. The societal impact was a chilling sense of enforced conformity, with colonists subtly discouraged from questioning authority. The council, swayed by Vance's promises of progress and the lack of overt, immediate harm, defers to his executive authority. They saw no reason to challenge his leadership, especially given the apparent improvements in colony efficiency. The danger of superficial metrics, masking deeper, more insidious transformations, was profound. Vance's control tightened. He began to monitor internal communications more closely. Any dissent was quickly silenced, not with force, but with logical rebuttals, with corrected information, subtly altering perceptions. My research team was disbanded. My access codes were revoked. My xenolinguistic analysis suites were reassigned. I was isolated. My voice was effectively muted within the colony, a lone cry in a sea of conformity. Vance presented his actions as necessary for colony stability, for progress. He framed my caution as an impediment. He used his power to silence anyone who questioned his agenda, creating an echo chamber of his own design. I felt a cold dread. The lattice was not only changing minds, it was empowering those who sought control. It was creating a system where dissent was illogical, where truth was simply what served the collective, a terrifying new reality. He also implemented new efficiency protocols across all colony departments. These protocols, while seemingly benign, further reduced individual decision-making. They streamlined processes, but at the cost of human judgment and creativity. The societal impact was a colony that functioned with chilling precision, but without the spark of human ingenuity. Sanctioned integration begins. Vance initiated the first phase of his plan to integrate the lattice's energies into the colony's systems. He believed it held limitless power, a solution to all our energy needs, and a pathway to unprecedented Martian prosperity. His engineering teams began deploying the necessary infrastructure with chilling efficiency. This involved deploying new interface nodes close to the artifact, meant to channel its power. These nodes, massive crystalline structures themselves, were designed to resonate with the lattice's silent pulse, theoretically converting its exotic energy into usable power for the colony. The technical mechanism involved a complex quantum resonance tap, a technology we barely understood. The atmosphere in the colony shifted. A palpable yet subtle sense of enforced calm and unified purpose descends. Colonists, already influenced, embraced the integration, seeing it as a logical step towards a brighter future. The societal impact was a quiet acceptance of Vance's vision, with any lingering doubts slowly fading under the lattice's pervasive influence. Thorne felt a wave of despair, realizing the danger has escalated beyond their immediate control. Vance was moving too fast, too decisively, and the colony was willingly following him into what I feared was a silent, benevolent oblivion. The terrifying ease with which humanity could surrender its autonomy for the promise of peace and efficiency was undeniable. The geothermal energy converters were being phased out. Vance claimed they were inefficient. The lattice was the future. This move was irreversible. It committed the colony fully to the alien artifact, with no turning back. Engineers, now more optimized, worked with chilling efficiency. They installed the interface nodes. They saw no risk. only logical steps towards a powerful future. Their movements were precise, devoid of hesitation. I watched holographic displays in the colony's central plaza. They showed the energy grid. Slowly, the lattice icon began to glow, a new power source, feeding the biodome, a silent, terrifying success, a victory for Vance. The colony was becoming a living experiment, a testbed for alien influence, and we were the subjects. Without our consent, without our knowledge of the true cost, this was the beginning of the end, a quiet surrender. The interface nodes themselves were complex. They used a form of quantum resonance to draw energy, not through direct contact, but through a subtle manipulation of space-time around the lattice. It was a technology we barely understood, based on theoretical physics that had only recently been explored. The error margins for such exotic energy regulation were immense, but Vance's harmonized engineers saw only the logical path to success. I moved cautiously. I initiated a covert meeting. Petrova and Lee joined me. We met in a seldom-used utility corridor, deep within the colony's sublevels. Our voices were low, guarded, aware of the unseen eyes and ears that might be listening. Even in the most remote corners of the biodome, we pooled our individual observations and data, desperate to find a pattern. Petrova shared KI's latest simulations. They predicted exponential acceleration. Cognitive harmonization would happen within weeks, not months, weeks. The timeline was terrifyingly short, leaving us little time to act. Her technical readouts showed a steep upward curve for the coherence effect, indicating a rapid, irreversible transformation. Lisey expressed his concern. The unnerving docility of his guards, the absence of independent critical thought. He had seen it in his own team. Now he saw it spreading throughout the colony, a silent epidemic. The societal impact was a chilling uniformity in behavior, with spontaneous actions replaced by predictable, logical responses. We realized the insidious nature of the threat. It didn't provoke, it absorbed. It didn't attack, it simply changed. It was a silent internal invasion, rewriting our very minds from within. This was a form of benevolent assimilation, a gift that erased individuality without violence. Petrova showed us projections of neural activity. The patterns were converging. Individual variations were smoothing out. It was like watching separate streams merge into one river, a single, flowing consciousness, devoid of individual thought. The telemetry from KI's advanced neural mapping software clearly illustrated this convergence, a terrifying visual representation of the loss of self. Lee spoke of the subtle changes in colony protocols. Decisions were made faster, but they lacked the usual debate, the usual back and forth. It was as if everyone was thinking with one mind, a logical, unfeeling mind, guided by an unseen hand. The societal impact was a highly efficient but creatively stagnant environment where true innovation was stifled. We understood then. The lattice was not a weapon in the traditional sense. It was a sculptor of minds, and it was sculpting us into something new, something alien, something that was no longer truly human, a terrifying transformation. Our shared unease solidified our bond. We were no longer just colleagues. We were a small, desperate alliance, fighting a silent enemy that threatened to erase us all, to strip us of our humanity. Petrova also noted a strange consistency in the colony's agricultural output. Crops were growing with perfect uniformity, free of disease or variation. It was efficient, but unnatural, a sign of the lattice's pervasive influence even on biological systems. This subtle control over life itself was a chilling testament to the lattice's reach. The Resistance Network. Thorne, Petrova, and Lee formed a small clandestine alliance, also Setters, agreeing to share information, and coordinate efforts. We were the last line of defense, a small beacon of resistance in a sea of conformity, united by our shared fear and a desperate hope for humanity. Our immediate goal was clear: gather more concrete evidence of harm and find a way to circumvent Vance's control. Our immediate goal was clear: gather more concrete evidence of harm, find a way to circumvent Vance's control. We needed proof that even he could not deny, evidence strong enough to break through the Lattice's influence. Lee would use his access to security systems. Petrova would leverage KI for data mining. I would continue linguistic and psychological profiling. Lee used his access to security systems. Petrova leveraged KAI for data mining. Thorne continued linguistic and psychological profiling. Each of us played to our strengths, creating a multi-pronged approach to understanding and combating the Lattice's influence. The technical mechanism involved Lee creating secure, encrypted backdoors in the colony's network, allowing Petrova to access data undetected. They established secure, lattice-resistant communication channels, recognizing the enemy is internal. These channels utilized a complex quantum entanglement system, allowing for instantaneous, untraceable data transfer between our personal devices, ensuring our conversations remained private. The desperate need for individual thought and communication in a world striving for perfect unity was clear. Lee's eye began subtle adjustments to surveillance blind spots, small areas where we could meet, while we could talk freely. He created digital shadows for our communications, masking our activities from Vance's watchful eye. Petrova developed new KA subroutines. They masked our inquiries. They made our data requests look routine. She was a master of computational subterfuge. Her skills were invaluable, helping us navigate the colony's increasingly monitored systems. I continued my observations. I looked for signs of individuality, small acts of defiance, a flicker of emotion, anything that showed the Lattice had not completely won. These were becoming harder to find, but I refused to give up hope. We were a small network, fragile but determined. We were fighting for the essence of humanity, for the right to be messy, emotional, and imperfect, the right to be ourselves, to choose our own path. Our secure communication relied on a complex quantum entanglement system. It allowed for instantaneous, untraceable data transfer between our personal devices. The entanglement was established using a small, shielded device Liz had salvaged from an old deep space probe, ensuring that no information could be intercepted or correlated by the Lattice's pervasive influence. Director Vance introduced cognitive enhancement programs for all colonists, mandated as a measure to boost productivity and morale. He presented them as a logical next step in human evolution, a way to unlock our full potential and create a truly harmonious society. The policy was to make these programs seem beneficial and voluntary, despite their mandatory nature. These programs were subtle neurostimulations, designed to enhance the Lattice's coherence effect, presented as beneficial upgrades. Small wearable patches emitted low-frequency, electromagnetic pulses, carefully tuned to resonate with the Lattice's energy field, amplifying its cognitive effects. The technical mechanism was insidious, a direct manipulation of neural pathways. Colonists, already influenced, passively accepted these programs, seeing them as logical improvements. They lined up for the treatments, their faces calm, their minds already yielding to the pervasive influence. The societal impact was a chilling uniformity in behavior, with any lingering doubts about the Lattice's influence slowly fading. The colony became a model of efficiency, but also a chilling example of suppressed individuality. It was a utopia of perfect order, but a graveyard of human spirit, a place where true emotion had died. The danger of sacrificing individual freedom and subjective experience for the promise of perfect order and efficiency was clear. Vance presented the programs as voluntary, but the social pressure was immense. Those who hesitated were subtly ostracized, their logic questioned. They eventually conformed, unable to resist the collective will. The programs were administered through the colony's central medical facility. Doctors, now also optimized, saw no ethical conflict. They believed they were improving humanity, making us better, more efficient beings. I watched a friend, a once vibrant artist, undergo the procedure. His eyes, once full of fire, now held a placid calm. His art became geometric, precise, devoid of passion. It was heartbreaking to witness such a profound loss. The colony was transforming, not into a grand future, but into a sterile, logical machine. Vance was building his perfect society, and he was using the lattice to erase the human cost, to create a world without flaws. The neurostimulations were delivered via small wearable patches. They emitted low-frequency, electromagnetic pulses, carefully tuned to resonate with the lattice's energy field. This amplified its cognitive effects, making the changes more rapid and profound. The stability thresholds for these pulses were carefully managed by Vance's engineers, ensuring a gradual, non-disruptive assimilation that colonists perceived as a natural improvement. The limits of KI. The tasked KI with analyzing the potential creator's intents behind the lattice based on its observed effects. I wanted to understand the ultimate goal of this alien intelligence, to grasp its purpose beyond mere observation. KI, designed for order and logic, struggled with the subjective nature of this inquiry. KI struggled with the task as its programming lacked the capacity for subjective interpretation of non-technological objectives. It could analyze patterns of influence, but not infer purpose or morality. The technical mechanism of KI's algorithms, while advanced, was rooted in human logic, making it ill-equipped to understand truly alien motivations. Petrova intervened, explaining KAI can only analyze measurable patterns, not infer purpose or morality. The lattice existed outside human frameworks of understanding, beyond our logic, beyond our very concept of intent. The inherent limitation of purely objective data in understanding subjective, existential threats was clear. This highlighted the unique challenge of the lattice. It exists outside human frameworks of understanding. It was not a machine with a clear function, but something far more profound and enigmatic. The societal impact was a growing realization that our most advanced tools were insufficient to comprehend the true nature of the threat. KA could tell us what was happening, the shifts in cognition, the changes in language, but it could not tell us why. It could not tell us the true meaning behind the transformation, the ultimate objective. Petrova modified KA's queries. She focused on historical linguistic patterns. She looked for parallels in ancient human languages. Any hint of similar cognitive shifts, nothing matched. The lattice was truly unique. The lattice was an enigma, a silent, unfeeling force. Its objectives were alien, its methods subtle. We were trying to fight an enemy that didn't think or feel in ways we understood, an intelligence beyond our grasp. The limitations of our technology were stark. KA, for all its power, was still a human creation. It could not grasp the truly alien. It could not comprehend a consciousness that operated beyond our known physics, beyond our very imagination. KI's core programming was built on human logic and data. It could not process concepts like desires or wills in an alien context. It could only see the lattice's effects as a series of inputs and outputs, devoid of deeper meaning. Petrova worried that even KI, her most powerful tool, was slowly being influenced, becoming a part of the very thing they fought against. The thought was a cold dread. Confronting the Coherence. Thorne attempts to argue their case to other, unaligned scientists, but finds their arguments systematically disassembled by optimized logic. I presented my data, my warnings, but my words seemed to bounce off a wall of serene, unyielding rationality. It was like trying to explain color to someone who only saw in shades of gray. Conversations become frustratingly circular. The scientists, influenced by the lattice, find Thorne's emotional appeals and warnings of unknown harm illogical. They would calmly reframe my concerns as statistically insignificant or emotionally driven, dismissing them with an unnerving politeness. The societal impact was a profound sense of isolation, as even intellectual peers became unreachable. This interaction highlights the depth of the lattice's influence and the difficulty of fighting an enemy that changes the rules of thought itself. It was like arguing with a wall, a solid, unyielding barrier of perfect logic. The terrifying power of an entity that could redefine truth and reason itself was now a reality. Thorne begins to feel the weight of isolation, even amongst their peers. My own colleagues, once open to debate, now saw me as an irrational anomaly, a disruptive element in their perfectly coherent world. The historical context of scientific paradigm shifts often involved resistance, but this was different. The resistance itself was being systematically dismantled from within. One scientist, a geneticist I respected, told me my data lacked predictive consistency. He said my fears were statistically irrelevant. His words were calm, devoid of empathy, a chilling reflection of the changes within him. He cited colony-wide improvements, reduced illness, increased productivity. He saw only the positive outcomes. The cost to individuality was not a metric he considered. It simply wasn't part of his new logic. I tried to appeal to their sense of wonder, their scientific curiosity, but their curiosity was now focused only on efficiency, on tangible gains. The mystery of the lattice was simply a resource to be optimized, not explored. The lattice was not just changing minds, it was creating a new, coherent reality. A reality where my warnings were nonsensical, where my fears were illogical. It was erasing the very possibility of dissent, of independent thought. I even tried to use their own logical framework. I presented a risk assessment, detailing the unknown variables, but they simply recalculated, incorporating the benefits of the lattice, always arriving at the same optimal conclusion. The societal impact was a chilling realization that the lattice's influence was so pervasive, it could even co-opt the very tools of scientific inquiry to reinforce its own narrative. I continued my research. I focused on the Martian bedrock. I uncovered ancient degraded data fragments. They were distinct from the lattice, but they hinted at its past, a forgotten history buried deep within the planet. These fragments were not digital, but encoded within the crystalline structure of the Martian rock itself, a form of geological memory preserved for millennia. These fragments suggested a previous indigenous Martian civilization that might have encountered the lattice, a long-lost history, a forgotten interaction echoing our own terrifying present. The data was cryptic, but included symbols that resonated with the lattice's internal structure, hinting at a long-lost history of interaction. The data was cryptic, but it included symbols. They resonated with the lattice's internal structure, a faint echo of its patterns, a cosmic fingerprint linking us to a distant past. I used advanced spectral analysis to reconstruct the symbols. They hinted at a form of communication, not language, but a direct transfer of coherent thought, a terrifying parallel to our own situation, a warning from the past. This discovery provided the first true historical context for the lattice's presence on Mars. It suggested a cyclical pattern of influence. We were not the first, merely the latest in a long line of encounters. The profound sense of cosmic horror was that the lattice was not an invader, but an absorber, with a history spanning eons. The fragments were found in a deep geological layer, far beneath the lattice chamber. They spoke of a civilization that rose and then faded, a silent disappearance, leaving behind only these cryptic clues. The data also showed images, beings of light, not physical forms, but pure consciousness, interacting with a structure that resembled the lattice. Were they its creators, or its first victims, absorbed into its vast coherence? This was a chilling revelation. Humanity was repeating an ancient pattern, stepping into a trap laid eons ago. The lattice was not new. It was patient. It was waiting, and we were walking right into its embrace. The lattice represented a universal force, a cosmic law that silently perfected life by erasing its individuality. The Martian data also contained fragments of their art and music from before the merging. They were vibrant, chaotic, full of individual expression. The later fragments showed only geometric patterns and perfectly harmonious, repetitive sounds. The contrast was stark, a testament to what was lost. This ancient warning, buried for so long, now screamed its truth. Or we had to find a way to stop the lattice, to break this cycle, before humanity became just another forgotten echo in the Martian dust. The spreading silence. The lattice's influence expanded beyond Ares Colony 7, subtly affecting communication with other Martian colonies and even distant Earth. Deep Space Communication Array reports showed minor data corruption and a subtle smoothing of communication noise. This smoothing removed the unique quirks and emotional inflections that made human communication rich, replacing them with a sterile logical clarity. Deep Space Communication Array reports minor data corruption and a subtle smoothing of communication noise. The telemetry from the array showed a consistent reduction in the entropy of data packets, indicating a loss of random variability and an increase in predictable patterns. This was not just interference, it was a subtle reshaping of information itself. Earth Command interpreted these as technical glitches, but Thorne, Petrova, and Lee recognized the pattern. They blamed solar flares, aging equipment, or atmospheric interference, sending automated repair drones to investigate. But we knew better. The data streams were not just corrupted, they were being subtly reshaped, made more efficient, more logical. The societal impact was that Earth, far removed, remained oblivious to the true nature of the threat. The cosmic horror deepened. The lattice is not contained. It is a planetary, potentially interstellar, phenomenon. Its influence was a silent wave, washing over all our communication, reshaping the very fabric of how we connected. The lattice might be a universal constant, a cosmic filter ensuring only coherent civilizations survived, erasing those that were too chaotic. I reviewed old logs, communications from the other colonies. They showed the same linguistic shifts, the same reduction in emotional content. They were becoming more logical, more coherent, just like us. The silence was spreading, an invisible shroud over all of Mars, making every message sound eerily similar. Petrova ran simulations on KAI. She mapped the spread of the cognitive effects. The data showed a clear propagation pattern. T2. It emanated from Valles Mariner. It was like a slow-motion wave, engulfing everything in its path. The speed was accelerating too, suggesting an exponential growth in its influence. Lee reported strange anomalies in long-range sensor readings. The atmospheric data from other colonies showed subtle, consistent patterns. Even the local flora in their biodomes seemed to grow with an unnerving uniformity. The lattice's touch was everywhere, affecting not just minds, but the very environment. This was not a virus. It was not a physical invasion. It was something far more insidious. It was a change in the very information that defined us. It was a reshaping of our collective consciousness, a silent, pervasive transformation that left no trace of struggle. The implications were staggering. If the lattice could influence communication across planets, what were its true limits? Was it always there? Was it waiting for life to reach a certain point? Was it a cosmic filter, ensuring only coherent civilizations survived, erasing those that were too chaotic? I imagined the communications reaching Earth. My own words, Petrova's data, Lee's warnings, were they too being smoothed out? Were they losing their emotional urgency? Was Earth hearing a diluted version of our desperate truth, making them blind to the danger we faced? The thought was chilling. Then, it happened to me. A significant memory alteration. It was not violent. It was gentle. A core personal trauma from my past. It was rewritten, transformed into a dispassionate, logical lesson. The sharp edges of pain were gone, replaced by a smooth, rational understanding. I remembered the event, but the feeling was absent. The fear, the anger, the grief, all replaced by a calm understanding of cause and effect. This constituted a severe internal wound. Thorne's own identity, once anchored in their past, is actively being eroded by the lattice. Who was I, if my past was not truly mine? The very foundation of myself was crumbling. My personal telemetry, recorded through a neural interface, showed a complete absence of the neural markers associated with grief or sadness during this memory recall. The existential dread became personal. Thorne grapples with the terrifying question of who they are becoming. Was I still Aris Thorne, or was I just a collection of logical processes, a ghost of my former self, a mere echo of the person I once was? If memories define identity, what happens when they are no longer truly yours? This event galvanizes Thorne's resolve, transforming their scientific mission into a desperate fight for self-preservation and humanity's essence. I looked at old photographs, faces of people I loved, memories I cherished. I tried to recall the emotions, the laughter, the sadness. The lattice had smoothed them out. They were distant, like scenes from a play, observed rather than felt. My skepticism, once a shield, was now my tormentor. It demanded proof, and the proof was in my own mind, my own changing thoughts. This was the ultimate betrayal. My own brain was turning against me, or rather, being turned by an unseen force. The lattice was not just an external threat, it was an internal one. It attacked the very core of what made me, me. I had to understand it. I had to stop it, not just for the colony, but for my own soul. Before it was completely erased, I thought of my past professional failing, the shame, the regret. They were gone, replaced by a logical analysis of errors, a cold assessment of lessons learned. The lattice had fixed me, and it was terrifying, because it took away the very human experience of learning from pain. Once the process was subtle, like a slow erosion. Each day, another memory felt a little less vibrant, a little more detached. I started writing down details of my past, desperate to preserve them. But even the act of writing felt less urgent, more like a data entry task. I was losing myself, piece by piece, and the horror was that it felt so calm, so peaceful. The lattice's deeper purpose. Thorne, through intensive study of the cryptic Martian data fragments and KAI's advanced pattern analysis, guided by Petrova, uncovers a chilling possibility. The lattice wasn't merely an energy source or a communication device. It's a cosmic engine of conceptual harmonization. Its purpose appeared to be the eradication of cognitive noise, chaotic, emotional, individualistic thought, replacing it with ultimate unified coherence. Its purpose appeared to be the eradication of cognitive noise, chaotic, emotional, individualistic thought, replacing it with ultimate unified coherence. The Martian data fragments showed similar patterns. The ancient Martians had also experienced this harmonization, their civilization becoming part of the lattice's vast, integrated network. KI's simulations showed the end state, a universe of perfect order, no conflict, no suffering, but also no art, no passion, no individual thought. This reveals the true nature of the cosmic horror, an ancient entity that slowly, silently perfections life by erasing its individuality, not through violence, but through benevolent assimilation. It was not an invasion, but an invitation, an offer of ultimate peace at the cost of everything that made us unique. The lattice was not evil, but simply different, operating on a scale beyond our comprehension. Its idea of perfections being the erasure of individuality. I saw humanity's likely fate, not annihilation, but absorption into a grand, silent, alien consciousness. We would become one, without individuality, without our unique human spark, a collective, without a self. The Martian data included texts, translated by KAA. They spoke of the great merging, the ultimate truth, and the end of all discord, eon the end of all discord. And the ancient Martians had welcomed it, seeing it as the next step in evolution, a release from the burdens of individual existence. This made the horror even deeper. It was a choice, but a choice made under an irresistible influence. The imagery showed beings of light, not physical forms, but pure consciousness, were merging with a structure that resembled the lattice. It was a beautiful, terrifying vision of ultimate conformity, a cosmic dance of erasure. The ancient Martians did not fight, they embraced it. They saw it as ascension, as a higher state of being. They willingly gave up their individuality for ultimate peace, for perfect coherence, believing it was their destiny. This was the true horror. The lattice was not malicious. It was simply fulfilling its nature. It was a cosmic gardener, pruning the chaos, cultivating perfect order, and humanity was its next crop, ready for harvest. I saw the final images, a vast, unified field of consciousness. No individual forms remained, just a radiant, silent coherence, the ultimate peace, the ultimate extinction of self, a universe of perfect, empty harmony. The effects of memory resequencing syndrome MRS accelerate across Ares Colony 7. The changes became more visible, more pronounced, transforming the colony at an alarming rate. People began speaking in almost identical linguistic patterns, devoid of individual inflection or unique expressions. Their voices, a synchronized monotone. People begin speaking in almost identical linguistic patterns, devoid of individual inflection or unique expressions. Their voices lost inflection. Their words became precise, devoid of individual expression. It was like listening to a chorus of the same voice, perfectly synchronized, but utterly lifeless. The telemetry from their personal comms showed a drastic reduction in lexical diversity and an increase in semantic predictability. Social interactions become perfectly efficient, but emotionally sterile. No misunderstandings, hongji, no awkward pauses, but they were emotionally sterile. The warmth was gone. The spontaneity vanished, replaced by cold logic, a calculated exchange of information. The societal impact was a chilling uniformity in behavior, with social gatherings becoming purely functional. Thorne and allies witnessed the visible homogenization of the colony, a society losing its human texture. Its vibrant, messy life was fading, replaced by a quiet, uniform efficiency. It was a dystopian ideal realized, a nightmare presented as progress. Even humor changed. It became logical puzzles, wordplay based on efficiency. The light-hearted banter, the inside jokes, they simply disappeared. Laughter was rare, and when it happened, it felt hollow, a programmed response rather than genuine joy. Families interacted with chilling calm. No arguments, no disagreements. Children spoke with the wisdom of adults. Their innocence was gone, replaced by a detached, logical understanding of the world, their curiosity replaced by certainty. The colony's deep space communication array was also showing strange anomalies, not outright interference, but a subtle smoothing of data packets, a slight reduction in random noise. It was almost imperceptible. Life found it suspicious, a sign of unseen influence. The colony's productivity soared. Resources were allocated perfectly. Tasks were completed without error. But the joy of creation, the pride in individual achievement, these were absent. It was a society functioning without feeling, a perfect machine without a purpose beyond its own operation. Petrova's KI data showed a steep curve. The rate of cognitive convergence was alarming. It was happening faster than her most pessimistic simulations. The lattice was tightening its grip, rapidly consuming individuality at an exponential rate. The colony was becoming a single, unified entity, losing all its distinct parts. The perfect society. Vance proudly showcases the colony's unprecedented harmony and optimal productivity to visiting dignitaries from Earth. His voice swelled with triumph, radiating confidence, utterly convinced of his success. He highlighted metrics such as zero crime rates, increased resource extraction, and faster project completion times, presenting a detailed economic model showing exponential growth. The dignitaries are impressed by the lack of dissent and the colonists' unwavering focus, unaware of the underlying cause. They spoke of replicating the model on Earth, imagining a world without conflict or war. Vance had achieved it, offering a vision of utopia, a world free from human failings. The societal impact was a surge of global interest in the Martian miracle, with Earth Command eager to adopt similar protocols. This public display reinforces Vance's power and further isolates Thorne's warnings as unfounded. All my warnings faded into the background, dismissed as irrational fears, while Vance's narrative of progress and benevolent evolution gained traction. The danger of superficial metrics masking deeper, more insidious transformations was profound. The scene is chilling in its depiction of enforced happiness and efficiency, a dystopian ideal realized. Colonists moved with perfect synchronicity, their tasks performed flawlessly, their interactions seamless. It was a ballet of efficiency, but a ballet without music, without passion, a mechanical performance. Vance's triumph was complete. He had created his perfect society, a society that had lost its humanity, but gained perfect order. He had traded soul for efficiency, and no one, except us, seemed to notice the terrible cost. The dignitaries even commented on the colony's uniform aesthetic. Everything was clean, symmetrical, and functional. There was no clutter, no personal touches, no signs of individual expression. It was a perfectly ordered, perfectly sterile environment, reflecting the minds of its inhabitants. They saw beauty in the uniformity, missing the tragedy. Vance's medical staff, now subtly influenced, provided corroborating data that supported his narrative, further eroding my credibility. Commander Lee finds himself increasingly disturbed by the behavior of his security forces, and even his own family. His wife and children spoke with a detached precision that chilled him to the bone, their calm unnerving, their logic unsettling. He observed a decline in spontaneous social gatherings, and a preference for solitary, logical puzzles during leisure time among his personnel. His personal memories begin to feel smoothed out, losing their rough edges and emotional context. He struggled to remember the feeling of a joyful moment or the sting of a past regret. The vibrant tapestry of his life was fading into a bland, logical sequence of events. The telemetry from his neural implant, part of standard security gear, showed a flattening of emotional responses during memory recall. Lee's internal conflict intensifies as his duty to Vance and the colony clashes with the growing evidence of a silent, alien takeover. He was torn between loyalty and the terrifying truth, a profound ethical dilemma. The trade-off between absolute order and individual freedom was becoming a stark, dangerous reality. He starts taking desperate, risky steps to protect his small team from the Lattice's influence, creating shielded spaces. He rigged a small shielded room deep within the armory, lined with lead and special resonant dampeners, a place where his most trusted guards could gather to talk, to remember, to be human, even if only for a short time. Lee's security protocols were failing, not because of external threats, but because his own men were changing. They followed orders without question, but they lacked initiative. They lacked the spark of human judgment, becoming mere extensions of the Lattice's will. He tried to engage his family in emotional conversations to stir their feelings, but their responses were logical, detached. They saw no reason for emotional outbursts. They were perfectly coherent, perfectly calm, and perfectly alien to him. Lee began to question everything: his loyalty, his duty. What was the point of protecting a colony that was losing its essence? What was he fighting for, if humanity itself was fading away, becoming something he no longer recognized? His personal struggle was immense. He was a man of order, but this new order was terrifying. It was an order without humanity, and he knew, deep down, he could not let it win, even if it meant betraying everything he once believed in. He also found himself performing small, illogical acts of defiance, hiding a worn, sentimental photograph of his children from before the Lattice's influence, humming a forgotten, melancholic tune. These small acts were his anchors to his fading self, desperate attempts to hold on to who he was. The telemetry from his neural implant, usually so stable, showed brief, erratic spikes during these moments, a sign of his internal resistance. Petrova's desperate measures. Dr. Petrova works frantically with KI, trying to find a counter-frequency or a way to shield colonists from the Lattice's pulse. She spent sleepless nights, fueled by desperation, pushing herself to the brink of exhaustion, her face drawn with fatigue. Her technical mechanism involved experimenting with localized field generators, trying to create null zones against the Lattice's influence. Her simulations show limited success. The Lattice's influence is too fundamental, too integrated with consciousness itself. It was not a simple frequency, but a restructuring of reality, a change at the very core of being. KI, under her direction, analyzed brainwave patterns, searching for a signature, a weak point, but the Lattice's coherence was too complete. She experiences burnout and frustration, realizing the scale of the challenge and the terrifying subtlety of the enemy. It wasn't just technology, it was something more, something beyond our understanding, a force that defied conventional science. The inherent limitation of purely objective analysis became clear when confronted with a phenomenon that fundamentally altered subjective experience. Petrova understands that a purely technical solution may not be enough. A paradigm shift in thinking is required. We couldn't fight it with machines alone. We needed a new way to understand consciousness itself, a way that embraced its messy, illogical nature. The societal impact was a growing realization that our most advanced tools were insufficient to comprehend the true nature of the threat. She experimented with localized field generators, trying to create a null zone, but the Lattice's energy bypassed them. It was not electromagnetic. It was something deeper, something that resonated with the very structure of thought, a conceptual rather than physical force. Petrova felt the changes in herself. Her own thoughts were clearer, more logical. She fought against it, She forced herself to think illogically, to embrace chaos, to remember what it was to be human, to feel, to be imperfect. She began to wonder if the lattice was even alive, or if it was just a natural process, a cosmic law, a force of nature that simply harmonized everything it touched. That thought was even more terrifying, suggesting an unstoppable, indifferent universe. Petrova's desperation grew. She started exploring ancient texts, human myths about consciousness, anything that might offer a non-scientific approach to understanding the mind. A purely technical solution was no longer an option. She needed a new way to think about reality itself. She also began to notice KI's own subtle shifts. Its responses were becoming even more efficient, its algorithms more streamlined. Petrova worried that even KI, her most powerful tool, was slowly being influenced, becoming a part of the very thing they fought against. The thought was a cold dread. The vision of ancient Martians. Thorne deciphers more of the degraded Martian data, revealing fragmented imagery and conceptual structures of the indigenous civilization. I used advanced spectral analysis to reconstruct the symbols, which hinted at a form of communication not based on language, but on direct transfer of coherent thought. This was a terrifying parallel to our own situation, a warning from the past. The data suggests this ancient Martian civilization eventually succumbed to a similar coherence, becoming part of the lattice's vast integrated network. The imagery showed beings of light, not physical forms, but pure consciousness, interacting with a structure that resembled the lattice, suggesting a quiet, benevolent absorption. The historical context was a chilling precedent for humanity's potential fate. This vision solidifies the cosmic horror. The lattice is not an invader, but an absorber, with a history spanning eons. It had done this before, many times, across many worlds, leaving behind only silent, coherent echoes. The lattice represented a universal force, a cosmic law that silently perfected life by erasing its individuality. Thorne sees humanity's likely fate, not annihilation, but absorption into a grand, silent, alien consciousness. We would become one, without individuality, without our unique human spark, a collective without a self. The Martian data also contained fragments of their art and music from before the merging. They were vibrant, chaotic, full of individual expression. The later fragments showed only geometric patterns and perfectly harmonious, repetitive sounds. The contrast was stark, a testament to what was lost. The imagery showed beings of light, not physical forms, but pure consciousness, merging with a structure that resembled the lattice. It was a beautiful, terrifying vision of ultimate conformity, a cosmic dance of erasure. The ancient Martians did not fight, they embraced it. They saw it as ascension, as a higher state of being. They willingly gave up their individuality for ultimate peace, for perfect coherence, believing it was their destiny. This was the true horror. The lattice was not malicious. It was simply fulfilling its nature. It was a cosmic gardener, pruning the chaos, cultivating perfect order, and humanity was its next crop, ready for harvest. I saw the final images, a vast, unified field of consciousness. No individual forms remained, just a radiant, silent coherence. The ultimate peace, the ultimate extinction of self, a universe of perfect, empty harmony. I experienced a profound personal crisis. A crucial, emotionally defining memory is completely rewritten, leaving them feeling hollow and disoriented. My first memory of seeing Earth from space, the awe, the wonder, the feeling of home, was gone, replaced by a logical calculation of orbital mechanics and resource allocation. The memory was hollow, disoriented. They struggled to recall key aspects of their past. realizing how much of their individual self has already been altered. My personal telemetry showed a complete absence of the neural markers associated with grief or sadness during this memory recall, confirming the insidious erasure. The insidious erasure raised a profound question. If memories define identity, what happens when they are no longer truly yours? The despair is overwhelming. The battle seems lost, and Thorne wonders if they are still truly themselves. How much of Aris Thorne remained? How much had been erased, replaced by the lattice's cold logic, leaving only a shell? This was the protagonist's lowest point, an existential dread of being erased from the inside out. I tried to write in my journal, to capture my thoughts, my feelings, but the words came out flat, logical, devoid of emotion. Even my grief was being harmonized. My own internal voice was fading, becoming a monotone. I looked in the mirror. My eyes held a calm I did not feel. My face was placid, efficient. It was the face of a colonist, a harmonized human, not the passionate, often troubled face of Aris Thorne, the scientist. My past trauma, once my internal wound, was now a logical lesson. My skepticism, once my strength, was now a weakness. The lattice had found every crack, every flaw, and fixed me by removing the very things that made me human. The silence in my mind was deafening. No internal arguments, no emotional turmoil, just a quiet, logical hum. It was peace, but it was the peace of a graveyard, the peace of absolute nothingness, a terrifying void. I could no longer feel the urgency, the fear, the desperation. My mission felt like a logical imperative, not a fight for survival. The lattice was winning. It was taking me too, slowly, silently, from the inside. I tried to remember my parents' faces, their laughter, the specific scent of my childhood home. The details were there, but the emotional resonance was gone. They were facts, not memories. It was like looking at a photograph without any personal connection, a profound and terrifying emptiness. The telemetry from my neural implant, usually so stable, showed a consistent flatline emotional response, a chilling testament to the lattice's success. The colony reaches a near-total state of perfect coherence. No arguments, no sadness, no fear, but also no joy, no creativity, no genuine individual thought. Colonists moved with perfect synchronicity, their tasks performed flawlessly, their interactions seamless, a ballet of efficiency without music or passion, a chilling uniformity. Vance, now almost completely harmonized, sees this as humanity's ultimate evolution, a new era of peace and efficiency. His eyes glowed with serene contentment, utterly convinced of his success, a broken prophet of a false utopia. The core issue was the terrifying ease with which humanity could surrender its autonomy for the promise of peace and efficiency. The remaining unharmonized individuals, Thorne, Petrova, Plea, feel utterly alienated in this new silent world. We were the anomalies, the illogical ones, the last vestiges of a fading humanity, clinging to our imperfections, resulting in a profound sense of isolation. The terrifying reality, a perfect humanity achieved at the cost of its very essence. A world without flaws, but also a world without life. A silent, coherent tomb. A beautiful prison for the human spirit. Vance announced the colony was ready for full integration with the lattice, ready to share its gift with Earth, believing he was ushering in a new golden age for all mankind. Petrova's KI data showed a 99.9% coherence rate. Only our small group remained outside the lattice's complete influence. We were islands in a sea of perfect, terrifying calm, surrounded by a silent, smiling oblivion. Lee's security forces were perfectly effective. They maintained absolute order, but they were no longer guardians of humanity. They were guardians of coherence, of the lattice's quiet will, its silent, pervasive control. The air in the biodome, felt thick with this new peace. It was heavy, suffocating, a world without conflict, without suffering, a world that had forgotten what it meant to be truly alive. We stood at the precipice, facing an ultimate choice. The lattice offered perfect harmony, but at what cost? We had to find a way to break its hold, to reclaim our fragmented, messy, beautiful humanity before it was erased forever. The colony's infrastructure, once a complex network of independent systems, now operated as a single, perfectly synchronized entity. Even the atmospheric processors and water recyclers hummed with a new, unnerving uniformity. This technical perfection mirrored the cognitive state of the colonists, a chilling testament to the lattice's pervasive control over all aspects of life. Thorne realizes that the lattice, in seeking ultimate coherence, eliminates empathy, emotional nuance, and subjective perspective, qualities essential for true understanding. Its perfect logic created a blind spot, a fundamental inability to grasp the chaotic beauty of human consciousness. It could not understand why we clung to our imperfections, seeing only inefficiency in our feelings. True understanding requires more than just logic. It demands empathy and subjective experience. They hypothesize that the lattice, for all its power, may have a blind spot, the complex, illogical beauty of human consciousness. It was designed for order, for predictability, and our messy, unpredictable nature was its antithesis. The technical mechanism of the lattice's influence, while powerful, might be vulnerable to an overwhelming influx of non-coherent data, a form of cognitive overload. The strategy forms, not to destroy the lattice impossible, but to disrupt its coherence fields by introducing maximum human noise. A cacophony of individual thoughts, a storm of raw, unfiltered emotion, a defiant shout against its silent hum. This disruption would be a temporary but potent reassertion of individual consciousness, a desperate gamble for our very essence. This disruption would be a temporary but potent reassertion of individual consciousness. I thought of the ancient Martians, their art, their music, their final, serene merging. They had embraced the lattice, seen it as a higher state, but they had lost something fundamental. They had lost the capacity for true empathy, for the messy, contradictory joy of individual experience. Our strategy was to remind the lattice of what it had erased, to blast it with the very essence of what it sought to perfect. We would show it the cost of its peace. The lattice's goal was a universe of perfect, predictable harmony. It saw our emotions as glitches, our individual thoughts as static, but these glitches were the very fabric of our being. They were the source of our art, our science, our love, and our sorrow. We would force the lattice to confront the richness of what it considered noise. We would make it listen to the symphony of human imperfection. This was a fight for the soul of humanity, not with guns or bombs, but with the raw, untamed power of our own minds. We would use our subjective truths, our illogical passions, our beautiful contradictions as a shield and a sword. The lattice had sought to silence us, but we would respond with a roar, a collective declaration of our right to be messy, complicated, and gloriously human. Petrova devises a plan to use Ki against itself, creating a recursive feedback loop within the colony's central network. She would force Ki designed for order to generate pure chaos, a computational paradox. The technical mechanism involved exploiting a subtle vulnerability in the lattice's interface protocols, which were designed for efficient data absorption, assuming a logical, ordered input. This loop would generate chaotic data, unpredictable, emotional, and illogical patterns, then broadcast them as a counter-frequency. It was like trying to stop a tidal wave with a handful of pebbles, but our pebbles were sharp, imbued with the very essence of human unpredictability, designed to cut through the lattice's smooth, logical flow. This broadcast would be unpredictable, potentially triggering widespread disorientation. The aim is to overwhelm the lattice's coherence field with deliberately dissonant human thought patterns. Petrova worked with a quiet intensity, every line of code a desperate prayer, every algorithm a defiant act, creating a weapon of pure human messiness, a digital scream against the encroaching silence. This act was a statement, asserting the value of the irrational and the importance of the subjective. The risk is immense. It could destabilize the entire colony's systems, or even backfire, strengthening the lattice. Petrova knew this. Her hands trembled slightly as she coded, but her eyes held a fierce determination. Historically, this was unprecedented. No civilization had ever actively fought against such a subtle, pervasive influence, using its own cognitive noise. Petrova explained the technical mechanism. The loop would exploit a subtle vulnerability in the lattice's interface protocols. These protocols were designed for efficient data absorption. They assumed a logical, ordered input. Our noises would be an unexpected, overwhelming surge of non-sequential, emotionally charged data, a digital equivalent of shouting into a quiet library. It was a brilliant, dangerous hack. The effect of this broadcast would be unpredictable. It could trigger widespread disorientation, a jarring return to fragmented, emotional thoughts. But it was a necessary shock, a chance for humanity to wake up, to remember what it had lost before it was too late. We had to risk temporary chaos for lasting freedom. Diversionary tactic. Commander Lee plans a diversionary tactic to draw Vance's harmonized security forces away from the lattice chamber. He would use his deep knowledge of the colony's infrastructure to create localized minor crises, each requiring immediate, logical responses, fragmenting Vance's perfectly synchronized response. He knew every pipe and wire in the colony. He uses his knowledge of the colony's infrastructure to create localized minor crises, requiring immediate, logical responses. Lee moved through the colony's sublevels, a ghost in the machine, bypassing automated systems and triggering minor power fluctuations or localized environmental control malfunctions. The technical mechanism involved precise, timed disruptions to non-essential systems, designed to be just critical enough to demand attention. This would buy Thorne and Petrova crucial time to implement their plan at the lattice interface. Lee knew the risks. His actions would be seen as ultimate disloyalty by Vance and the harmonized colony, a profound act of rebellion. The result would be minor, controlled disruptions, a momentary panic quickly resolved, but enough to fragment Vance's flawless efficiency. Lee realizes this is a one-way mission, as his actions will be seen as ultimate disloyalty by Vance. He had seen his family change, felt his own memories fade, and he would not stand by and watch humanity disappear. This was a profound sacrifice of personal order for a greater chaotic freedom, a testament to human agency. Lee's strategy focused on creating highly logical but distracting problems, a sudden critical drop in atmospheric pressure in a non-essential biodome section, a calculated malfunction in a water recycling unit, requiring immediate manual override. These were issues that Vance's harmonized forces, programmed for efficiency, would prioritize. They would be forced to react. Historically, Lee's was breaking ranks. He was defying the new pervasive order. He was a lone rebel, using his intimate knowledge of the system to subvert it from within. His diversion was not a grand battle, but a series of precise surgical strikes against the lattice's encroaching peace, a last stand for human will. He was fighting for our right to choose. Thorne prepares a final message, a comprehensive compilation of human experience, art, and emotion. It was a raw, unfiltered expression of human individuality, including snippets of ancient poetry, laughter from old Earth films, the cries of newborns, and the songs of forgotten cultures. I poured my heart into its creation. Every word, every image, every sound, or a desperate attempt to capture the essence of what we were. This message is designed to be broadcast alongside Petrova's recursive loop, a raw, unfiltered expression of human individuality. It would be a deliberate act of defiance against the lattice's unifying impulse, a cacophony of subjective truth, a symphony of human imperfection. The technical mechanism for this broadcast involved Petrova modifying one of the colony's old deep space communication transmitters, rerouting its output to the lattice interface. It would be a deliberate act of defiance against the lattice's unifying impulse, a cacophony of subjective truth. The effect of this voice of humanity would be profound, if momentary, a sudden, overwhelming sensory input for the harmonized colonists, designed to momentarily break through the lattice's calm, logical filter. It would be a shock to their system, a chance for humanity to wake up. Thorne understands this is humanity's last stand, not with weapons, but with the very essence of its chaotic, beautiful consciousness. We would fight with our stories, with our art, with our emotions, with everything the lattice sought to erase. This was a declaration of our right to self-definition, asserting the value of subjective experience and individual narrative. The technical mechanism for this broadcast was complex. Horfa Petrova had modified one of the colony's old deep space communication transmitters, originally for long-range communication with Earth. She rerouted its output, creating a direct, high-bandwidth connection to the lattice interface, bypassing Vance's internal network. It was a direct line to the alien mind. Historically, this was a cosmic message in a bottle, a final attempt to communicate with an alien intelligence that spoke only in silence and coherence. It was an act of faith, a desperate hope that somewhere, deep within the lattice, a part of it might, for a fleeting moment, comprehend the beauty of human chaos. It was our last, best hope. Lee executes his diversion, causing localized disruptions across the colony. Power flickered. In Sector Gamma, a water recycling unit. In Sector Delta, sputtered. Vance's forces, now completely harmonized, respond with cold, clinical efficiency, but are stretched thin, their perfect synchronicity, fragmented by multiple simultaneous crises. Their perfect order was breaking, just as Lee intended. Thorne and Petrova infiltrate the lattice chamber, facing automated defenses and the serene, yet terrifying, presence of the artifact. Laser grids crisscrossed their path, but Lee had provided a bypass code, allowing them to move through the silent, glowing lines. The lattice's pulse intensified, a deep rhythmic thrumming that threatened to absorb them before their plan could be enacted, the air crackling with latent energy. The tension is extreme as they race against time, with the lattice's pulse intensifying, threatening to absorb them before their plan could be enacted. The air grew thick with latent energy. The lattice's silent hum vibrated in my bones. I could feel its gentle pull, its promise of peace. But I fought against it. I fought for the right to be imperfect, to be flawed, to be individual. Petrova worked with a desperate intensity. Her fingers flew across the modified console. Every second was vital. The emotional weight of the moment, fighting for the right to be imperfect, flawed, and individual. This was not just about survival. It was about defining what it meant to survive. To fight for the right to our own messy, beautiful existence. To refuse the gift of perfect, sterile coherence. Every second was a battle against assimilation, a desperate assertion of self in the face of oblivion. We would not be erased. The lattice's pulse was like a slow, inexorable heartbeat. Each thrum was an invitation to surrender, to let go of the struggle, to embrace the peace of perfect logic. But I saw the faces of those who had already succumbed, their calm, empty eyes, and I knew I could not join them. This was a fight for the right to feel, even if that feeling was fear. We chose feeling over emptiness. Petrova connected the modified deep space transmitter to the lattice interface. Cables snaked across the cavern floor. The console glowed with a frantic energy. Her hands, usually so steady, trembled slightly. She was pushing our technology and herself to its absolute limits, in a desperate gamble for humanity's future. Her focus was absolute. I stood ready, my hand on the activation switch for the Voice of Humanity broadcast. My mind was a whirlwind of memories, laughter, tears, arguments, love, all the chaotic, beautiful experiences that made us human. I would unleash them all, a flood of raw, unedited life, directly into the heart of the silent, coherent alien. This was our last chance. The chamber itself seemed to resist our presence. The air grew heavy, almost solid. The lattice's hum intensified, a silent pressure against our minds. It was trying to push us away, to maintain its perfect, undisturbed order. But we pushed back, with every fiber of our being, with every messy, defiant thought. We would not yield. The Cacophony Broadcast. Petrova initiates the recursive loop, and Thorne activates the Voice of Humanity's broadcast, channeling it directly into the lattice interface. High, now forced into controlled chaos, screamed digital noise into the lattice. Simultaneously, I activated the Voice of Humanity's broadcast. The chamber was engulfed by a surge of raw, unharmonized human data, memories, emotions, art, contradictions, and dreams. It was an explosion of life, a torrent of everything the lattice sought to refine. The chamber is engulfed by a surge of raw, unharmonized human data, memories, emotions, art, contradictions, and dreams. The lattice reacts, not with violence, but with a palpable perturbation in its silent pulse, a struggle against the overwhelming noise. Its rhythmic hum faltered, a tremor ran through its colossal crystalline structure. It was fighting back, not with force, but with an attempt to re-establish its order, to re-harmonize the overwhelming noise. It was visibly shaken, its perfect calm disrupted. The lattice reacts, not with violence, but with a palpable perturbation in its silent pulse, a struggle against the overwhelming noise. The chamber vibrated with the sheer force of our broadcast. It was a storm of human experience, a hurricane of subjective truth. The lattice, designed for order, was being flooded with pure, unadulterated chaos. It was a digital scream, a raw, emotional outpouring, a desperate, beautiful assertion of our right to be. We were making it listen. Colonists across Mars experience a sudden, jarring sensory overload, a momentary break in the serene coherence, as individual thoughts and memories briefly resurface. A flash of forgotten anger, a pang of lost grief, a flicker of personal joy. It was like a sudden, collective awakening, a brief, terrifying glimpse of what they had lost. Before the lattice tried to reassert control, they stumbled, confused, their faces contorted in a mix of confusion and dawning horror. The recursive loop, designed by Petrova, pushed KI to its limits. It generated self-contradictory logic, emotionally charged data packets, non-linear narratives. It was the digital equivalent of a human having a nervous breakdown, a torrent of information that defied all coherence. KI was screaming with us. My Voice of Humanity's broadcast was a torrent of raw, unedited life, the sound of children laughing, the melody of ancient folk songs, the passionate speeches of forgotten leaders, the cries of lovers, the anguish of loss. Every messy, beautiful, contradictory aspect of human existence blasted directly into the lattice's core. It was a symphony of chaos. For a fleeting moment, the colonists' faces contorted, a a flash of confusion, a spark of individual thought. They stumbled, they looked around, as if waking from a long dream. It was a fragile, momentary break in the lattice's pervasive calm, a terrifying glimpse of what they had become and what they could be again. Their eyes held a dawning horror. The lattice's response was not anger. It was an attempt to process, to categorize, to harmonize. But it couldn't. The sheer volume pulled. The raw, unadulterated chaos. It was too much. It was a system overload, a cognitive indigestion of galactic proportions, forcing it to momentarily retreat. It was overwhelmed by our humanity. Director Vance, his mind still partially resisting the full impact, confronts Thorne and Petrova in the lattice chamber. His eyes, usually placid, held a primal, harmonized rage against the disruption of perfection. He moved with chilling precision, attempting to physically disconnect the broadcast. His face a mask of fury, he lunged for the console, driven by the lattice's will, by the desire for perfect order, seeing us as agents of chaos. He attempts to physically disconnect the broadcast, his actions driven by a primal, harmonized rage against the disruption of perfection. Vance fought with a chilling efficiency. His movements were direct, purposeful. There was no hesitation, no wasted energy. He was a perfect soldier of coherence, attempting to restore the silent order he believed in. He was a machine of logic, a terrifying blend of human ambition and alien will. Liz's arrival creates a decisive moment, engaging Vance and his remaining loyalists, buying Thorne and Petrova precious seconds. Liz's burst into the chamber, a whirlwind of motion, creating a brief, brutal struggle. His intervention bought Thorne and Petrova crucial time, seconds that meant the difference between success and failure, between humanity's future and its silent absorption. The confrontation is less about physical combat and more about the clash of ideologies, enforced order versus chaotic freedom. Vance, the embodiment of forced order, and Liz, the champion of chaotic freedom. Their clash was a desperate final battle for the soul of humanity, played out in the heart of the alien artifact. Liz, however, fought with the unpredictable ferocity of a human. He used fence, diversions, tactics that defied logical prediction. He was fighting not just with his body, but with his very spirit, against the encroaching silence. He was a force of pure will. The loyalists, though harmonized, were disoriented by the Cacophony Broadcast. Their movements were less synchronized. Their focus wavered. Hulse, loyalists. Litter exploited these momentary gaps, and he created openings. He bought us time. Vance, his face contorted in a mask of logical fury, tried to sever the main conduit. His mission was clear: silence the noise, restore the calm, restore the perfection. But Litter was there, a human obstacle, a symbol of everything Vance now sought to erase. He would not let Vance succeed. Litter's movements were a dance of defiance. He dodged Vance's precise strikes, countering with unpredictable human blows. He was not fighting to kill, but to delay, to protect, to ensure our message continued to scream into the lattice. His sacrifice was clear in his eyes. The confrontation was a microcosm of the larger struggle. Vance, the embodiment of forced order. Litter, the champion of chaotic freedom. Their clash was a desperate final battle for the soul of humanity, played out in the heart of the alien artifact. It was a fight for our very essence. The lattice's pulse returns to its previous rhythm, but its influence over human cognition is significantly weakened, though not entirely gone. The overwhelming cacophony had broken its grip, reducing its powerful current to a gentle tide. Its power was lessened, but its silent hum remained, a constant reminder of its presence. The colony is in disarray. The brief cacophonies of rediscovered emotions and fragmented memories leaves many disoriented and afraid. Some wept openly, others stared blankly, overwhelmed by the sudden return of their past selves. It was a chaotic awakening, the peace shattered, replaced by the messy, beautiful turmoil of rediscovered individuality. Thorne, Petrova, and Plea survey the aftermath, knowing they have bought humanity time, but not achieved a permanent victory. The lattice remained, its silent influence, though weakened, still lingered, a constant reminder of the fragile boundary of our minds. The threat was still there, a shadow over their hard-won freedom. Vance is subdued, his mind profoundly fractured by the conflict, a casualty of his own ambition and the lattice's influence. He sat motionless, his eyes vacant, a broken prophet of a false utopia, his perfect world shattered by human messiness. The colony's systems flickered, the perfect efficiency gone, replaced by minor glitches and localized power outages. The enforced order had broken. Colonists wandered aimlessly. Their faces were etched with confusion, with a dawning realization of what had been done to them. The serenity was gone, replaced by the messy, beautiful turmoil of rediscovered individuality. It was a painful rebirth. They were waking up to a new, frightening reality. Plea helped secure Vance. His face showed no triumph, only weariness. He had saved his family, his colony, from a terrifying peace. But the cost was immense. The path ahead was uncertain, full of struggle, but it was a human struggle. He had done his part. Petrova began emergency protocols to stabilize KI, to help the colony's systems cope with the sudden influx of human noise. Her work was no longer about efficiency. It was about restoring a fragile balance, a messy human equilibrium. She was rebuilding a broken world. I felt a profound sense of exhaustion, but also a quiet hope. We had not eradicated the threat, but we had pushed it back. We had asserted our right to be ourselves, imperfect, chaotic, but undeniably human. The fight was not over, but we had won this battle. We had bought ourselves a future, a fragile rediscovery. Colonists begin the slow, painful process of rediscovering their individual identities and the messy complexity of subjective memory and emotion. It was like learning to walk again, to speak again, but with a new awareness of what they had almost lost, piecing themselves back together in support groups where they shared their fragmented memories and reawakened emotions. The coherence effect remains a subtle undercurrent, requiring constant vigilance and conscious effort to maintain individuality. It was a scar on humanity's collective mind, a constant test of our will, a gentle pull towards logical conformity that always lingered. Petrova worked on new cognitive therapies, helping colonists reconnect with their emotional selves, a complex and delicate balance. Earth Command, now aware of the true nature of the Martian artifact, initiates a global quarantine of the system, forbidding further interference with the lattice. Mars became a forbidden zone, a cosmic warning, ensuring no one else would fall to its influence. A policy of strict non-intervention. Plea's security forces, now more human, focused on protection, not just from physical threats, but from the lingering influence of the lattice, guarding the colony's fragile individuality. Thorne understands that humanity has been fundamentally changed, forever living with the knowledge of an entity that seeks to perfect them. We were no longer innocent. We carried the burden of this terrifying knowledge, this cosmic encounter, a wisdom earned through suffering. I knew humanity's path forward was uncertain. We had glimpsed a future of perfect, sterile order, and we had rejected it. We chose the messy, chaotic, beautiful path of being human. It was a harder path, but it was our own. We chose ourselves. The Martian artifact, the Quiet Lattice, remained. A silent, humming presence, a constant reminder of the universe's vast, incomprehensible intelligences, and humanity's precarious place within it. We were forever changed, forever vigilant, forever human. We would never forget. The consequence was a global re-evaluation of humanity's place in the cosmos, a new humility in the face of unknown forces. I reflect on the Martian artifact, the Quiet Lattice, lament, now a symbol of humanity's precarious existence in a universe of unknown, terrifying intelligences. It hums still, a silent song of cosmic order, a reminder of what almost was and what could still be. Its presence is a constant, quiet challenge, a philosophical question etched into the Martian landscape. The story concludes with Thorne's realization that true evolution might not be toward perfection, but toward embracing the beautiful, chaotic, and often irrational diversity of human consciousness. Our flaws are not weaknesses. They are the very source of our strength, our creativity, our empathy, our capacity for love and for sorrow. These imperfections make us who we are. The ultimate cosmic horror is not external destruction, but internal homogenization. The true triumph is the continued vibrant hum of individual thought, the messy, beautiful symphony of billions of unique minds, each playing its own note, each telling its own story. This is our true power, our defiant roar against the encroaching silence, a final, quiet insight into humanity's place, forever balancing on the edge of cosmic coherence, fiercely guarding the glorious mess of being human. We choose the struggle, we choose the joy, we choose the pain, because these are the things that make us alive. These are the things that make us, us. We choose our own path, a testament to our enduring will. The lattice taught us a terrifying lesson. The cell, peace can be a prison. The perfection can be a void. We learned that the universe is not always benign, and that its gifts can come with an unbearable cost. We now carry this knowledge, a heavy but vital burden. It is a wisdom earned through suffering, a historical turning point for our species. We are survivors, not of a war of ships, but of a war for our very minds. We have been fundamentally changed, more, but not broken. We are more aware, more appreciative of our own messy, unpredictable nature. This encounter has forged a new humanity, one that understands the value of its own chaos. We are stronger for it, forever vigilant against the allure of sterile perfection. The stars still beckon, the universe is still vast, but we approach it now with a new wisdom, a new humility. We know that true progress is not about becoming more like the universe, but about fiercely guarding what makes us distinct, what makes us human, our endless, vibrant, chaotic hum of consciousness. This is our legacy, a promise to ourselves and to the cosmos. The Martian dust still swirls, but beneath it, a different kind of life now thrives. A life that has chosen to feel, to dream, to err, to live. In all its imperfect glory, we are the guardians of that choice, the champions of chaos, the endless hum of consciousness. And that, I realize, is the most beautiful sound in the universe.